So, finally, everything is now working. Huh. And this goes in there, that goes in there. So, this should go in here. Okay, great. The best part of this setup is I have no idea what's happening on my computer right now. With that being said, so I forgot that I also have to turn talking to the mic. Okay, so with that being said, hey everyone, for this first, well, technically second Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm 2 live stream. So going into this video, there was something that was been rather on my heart when talking about the Naruto series in general, which is, how does one get into Naruto? Is it good for a person to, how do you say? Is it good for a person to come into Naruto just from the Storm games? And the answer is actually a very mixed bag when it comes to at least Storm 1. And for that matter, the Naruto videos in general, because in my opinion, there's not really a Naruto game that really covers the first part of Naruto's story correctly. And what I mean by that is it's all kind of segmented in terms of the perspectives you get. Some games like Rise of a Ninja only gives you Naruto's perspective. Other games tend to cut out a lot of in between, so you're left with more questions and answers. But as far as the media goes, with its coverage of Shippuden, it's actually a pretty good thing, with the exception that Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm 2, 3, and 4 do cut out a bit of the fat from their fights. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, they add in a lot, and these are some of, in my opinion, the best ways to experience some of these fights. One way that they don't really capture some of the, I guess, intelligence going on in the fight is the fact that they have to cut around it to show you the highlight reels that go on. Sasuke in particular is one character that I always think about, and how when it comes to his fights that he was not done the best, adapted the best, that's the best word that I can use to describe it, is that his fights in particular are very pragmatic. He thinks a lot during his fights and calculates a lot about how he can handle them. And it's done in a way particular to show sort of his hubris in the later part of Shippuden, spoiler warning by the way, where after a certain point when he gets the ability he has more or less been looking for, he doesn't think that much because he thinks he has all the power he needs, and it leads to him getting humbled pretty quickly. And when you come into the Storm games, you lose a lot of that interesting in between because it's just not there. It's adapted in a way that makes playing the video game more exciting and approachable for people who, don't really want to spend that much time to it. I rambled a lot, but the long and short of it is Storm is a good way to experience Shippuden, not so much Part 1. With that being said, I also wanted to, cover in Part 1 and Part 2 of Naruto. Not Part 1 and Part 2, I meant to say the anime and the manga for Naruto. I wanted to make this a whole sweeping discussion for it. So, as far as the anime goes, the anime is how I got my start into Naruto as a whole. And while it is okay, honestly, there's not too much to say bad about it. In fact, one of the best parts about the anime is the fact that it adds a lot. There's a lot of fight scenes in the manga that are hardly even there. One of my favorite fights in Naruto is actually Sasuke versus Orochimaru in the Forest of Death. That is not something that is adapted all too well. Not even adapted all too well. It's not what's the word I'm looking to say? It's hardly even there in the manga. It more so exists just for to get the story rolling. That's what I'm trying to say. With that being said, as much as the Naruto anime adds, it's also one of the worst aspects of it, due to the fact that hold on a second. All right. So, as I was saying, one of the worst aspects about the Naruto anime is the fact that it adds so much in the fact that, what's the word I'm looking for? It ends up being too much, and that's where we get the filler from. Now, the filler in a lot of cases isn't actually all that bad. However, what's the word I'm trying to say here? However, it's a lot of fluff, and it's not necessary for the story of Naruto. In fact, in a lot of cases, the filler can distract from the overall tone of how Naruto is. I'll get more into this as we actually start playing the game and, you know, don't stop watching the computers play off and stuff like that. But how do I describe it in just one word? Or not one word, but one sentence. As much good as it adds, the anime adds, it is oftentimes not necessarily. It's done so in a way that where not only is it too long, but sometimes it can miss the point. And in fact, I can say that for a lot of anime adaptations, at least for the time that Naruto was coming out. I could not tell you specifically about anime adaptations coming out now, because I'm not really paying attention to that anymore. Nevertheless, with that being said, the anime is alright, all things considered. Now, the manga, on the other hand, I feel that one of the manga's biggest strengths is the fact that it is so brief. In the amount of arcs, the amount of, how do I say this? In the amount of time it takes you to complete, like, say, the first major arc with Zabuza and Haku, you can probably start getting to the Chunin exams. In fact, not even probably, you are in the Chunin exams. Because I think it's roughly an hour of time to head into the Chunin exams. No, not an hour, 9 hours, sorry. It's roughly in 9 hours, and it takes 9 hours to complete the whole Zabuza and Haku thing from the anime. But even as it is brief, even as it is enjoyable in a lot of senses, there are some things that I feel are kind of lacking even from the manga standpoint, and those things are made up for in the anime or the game. Long story short, there are a lot of ways to get into Naruto, and each way has its own benefits and drawbacks. And this time around, considering the fact that Ultimate Ninja Storm 1 barely has a campaign, we're just gonna go through with Ultimate Ninja Storm 2. So, with that being said, I'm, from this point onwards, not going to hold spoilers in any kind of regard. I'm going to be talking about this from a person who has gotten to the end of Naruto, that was like 10 years ago, and am currently in the middle of rereading it again. This will be a nice trip down memory lane, and a really good, I don't know, I guess kind of benchmark thing, for lack of a better term, considering the last live stream I did. Basically to see where I've gotten, and also to kind of show my appreciation for the series. Naruto is a really cool and interesting anime, manga, video game too, I guess. But I don't know. I feel that it doesn't get the kind of respect I don't know. It doesn't get something along the lines of that I think it deserves for the amount of interesting topics and themes that it ends up bringing to the table. I think one of the more interesting things that crossed my mind as I talked about it was me coming to the realization that for whatever reason Naruto was popular with kids, and it is, I don't know, it's definitely not a kids show. It's definitely targeted at teenagers, but I guess you don't choose what audience you end up getting. You kind of just roll with it from there. Um, with that being said, I Ultimate Ninja Storm 2 opens up on probably my least favorite way to introduce a story, and I get it's supposed to get you hyped for what's to come in the game, but I remember when Shippuden first came out, and the introductory episode was Naruto finding, was Naruto finding Sasuke in Orochimaru's hideout, and that was the most confusing and probably frustrating experience I had because going, well, whether you go from anime or manga, going from Naruto leaving the village to that is just kind of set up for did I miss anything? Especially, oh man, especially in America where we didn't actually finish Naruto's original air date of TV shows, which in retrospect might be for the better, considering the fact that it was all filler related and it wasn't exactly moving the needle forward, but I digress. So, as we begin Ultimate Ninja Storm 2, this is the homecoming, for lack of a better term, arc. And it is not something that is big, I guess, for lack of a better term, in the manga. And I'm going to be using the manga to talk about this because honestly, that's the easiest thing for me to reference at this point in time. Also, the fastest. So, this arc is not big, it's just here to establish a time skip happen, but there are some cool things within it. Unfortunately, those cool things are gonna come up later in the boss fight, so we can't really talk about that now. But in the meantime, something that I did find interesting in going back to the Naruto manga was rereading the Zabuza and Haku arc. And it's really kind of interesting. No matter how many times you can see something as a child, you don't fully get it until you mature a bit and are able to understand different concepts and things like that. So I'm not going to go on a full breakdown of the Zabuza and Haku arc, but the long and short of it is that as bad as Zabuza is, he is a symptom and not the cause of a problem, right? And you know this because they mentioned that in the Hidden Mist Village, yeah, in the Hidden Mist Village, with their graduation exam and things of that nature, that this was bound to happen to a person, and it just so happened to be that this person would be the one guy who would leave the village and try to stage a coup. Um, how do I? I'm formulating thoughts here. So, long story short, Zabuza, like I said, he's a symptom, not a. He's a symptom of the greater problem at hand, and that arc establishes that the ninja world in general is very flawed. At the end of the arc, well, one of Zabuza's main things that he refers to Haku as is a weapon. It's not a person, it's not a son-like figure to him, it's just a weapon. He doesn't, quote unquote, doesn't care about Haku's emotions or anything of the lines of that. And that is really something that is echoed in the shinobi world in general. Sakura quotes one of the test answers that she gave, or that shinobi are never supposed to show their emotions. When Sasuke questions Kakashi at the end of the arc for saying that ninja are more so tools to be used at the hands of whatever the Lord of Fire's will, Sasuke asks that, okay, but like, do you agree with that? And he says, nah, not really. um, but that is it sets up Naruto for the greater picture of things, because this would later go on to be a aspect of the tuning exams. It's not played for a big deal, but it is something that is highlighted at the preliminaries, where the third Lord Hokage said, what did he say? He said that basically, okay, I don't remember what he said specifically, but if I can just put it into my own words, that each village would show off their prized cow to the other lords of the village, where they could then potentially get more missions and stuff like that. And it's like, wow, this sucks. And like, you don't notice any of this as a kid because, you know, they're talking over my head, but it leaves for something that when I go back to, when I reread and retouch on that, brings a lot of things into Shippuden, brings a lot of things that Shippuden adds into the mix into greater perspective. You know, a lot of love goes into the real early parts of Naruto, from, I feel, just the community in general, whether they are still, whether they still like Naruto or whether they haven't touched Naruto in years. And I don't know. I think that there is, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot more care that, at least, excuse me, I thought was put into Naruto, that I didn't appreciate all the way back then. And it's really cool nowadays to go into this series and look at it with a different pair of eyes and see just how much all this stuff was built up upon in part 1 Naruto, but it didn't feel as constructed or directed. What's the word I'm looking for here? I guess directed, until we get into Shippuden. I think of all things that Shippuden does, intentionality is one of its biggest strengths, because a lot of things, okay, so one of the things that is I guess kind of came into popularity in recent times, is Talk no Jutsu. Now, Talk no Jutsu has been a thing since part 1 Naruto. Literally, Zabuza and Haku, or Naruto has a moment talking to Zabuza in the Zabuza and Haku arc, where he does the same thing he's essentially always did, but it kind of feels messy. Like, he doesn't exactly know where he wants to go, but he knows that Haku's emotions mean something to him. And so he's kind of just, he's a kid that's mad, and he's doing his kid that's mad thing and just screaming at an adult, and you know, it happens to actually land a mark, and that's cool. And I feel that, I didn't want to actually talk about this beforehand, but you know what, that's fine. We can just flow right here. That, you know, Naruto's words leave a big impact on people, and you see this throughout all the major part 1 arcs. There is not a single arc where Naruto's conversation did not change someone's mind. Maybe it didn't necessarily change their destination point in the case of Sasuke, but it did did change their mind and what they were going to do, what they were going to accept, so on and so forth. And considering the fact, you know, we're about to do the bell string test in a little bit. When I mentioned earlier about Shippuden being a lot more about intentionality, at least in terms of Naruto's part, was the fact that he now has to come to an understanding in order to reach someone, I guess, for lack of a better term. And this shows itself in Kakashi. Again, the bell string test in the manga is not something that is big. It is kind of a little throwaway, whatever. Haha, Naruto and Sakura finally completed the test. Cool. All right. But the biggest part about it is the fact that Naruto decides to talk to Kakashi, and that's how he beats him. He beats him by intentionally picking something that resonates with Kakashi, and that ends up being his downfall. And it definitely plays into later Shippuden events where Naruto basically he was going down the list of Kakashi. He's stronger than this guy. He has better sense of smell than that guy. Basically, Naruto and Sakura could be fighting Kakashi all day and not move the needle. So he needs a new answer, and the new answer is just to talk to him. And obviously, this plays into Naruto's much more grander themes. Which I still haven't talked about yet, but those grander themes being, for lack of a better term, love? No, not even lack of a better term. That is the term. That Naruto truly, as a story, focuses itself on love and how love between two people, or the lack of love that is shown to one person, or how the loss of love can affect people, can affect them in positive, negative ways, how they choose to handle it, how they choose to harbor it, things of that nature. And I haven't finished, obviously, at the time of this recording session, stream session, whatever this is. I haven't finished reading Naruto again. But it is, once again, interesting to see how much intentionality matters. And even as I say this, like I'm running through later arcs in Shippuden in my head, and I'm going like, wow, yeah, okay, so that's what it would explain this later, particularly at the ending of the 5 Kage Summit, or like why, Naruto essentially could talk Sasuke off the mountain of revolution and things of that nature, and that's actually something really cool. I appreciate going back to this story and going, dang, I actually got something out of this. That's pretty cool. Oh no, there is voice acting here, so I can't just mash right through it. Matter of factly, it's probably better that I don't mash through this anyways. A lot of times, even for games that I've already completed front to back multiple times over, actually I think this was in the last Naruto live stream I did, where I had to go into some specific, no, I had to talk to Shizune, and literally because I wouldn't read, I spent like 5 minutes bumbling around, so yeah, I learned that lesson. So, as far as combat system goes, well, I don't really have anything more to say about Storm 2. One of the unfortunate things about this game is the fact that it's not Storm Generations or any other Storm game that came before it. This game walked so that those games could run. And I mean that in terms of the chakra system, the meter system, whatever. Because you can substitute at any point so long as you have chakra in the chakra meter, it really stinks. You're not really able to do much against a person who knows how to play this game. At least from my perspective, you're not able to do much. With that being said, it is still fun to get a hold of. Hang of? Get a hang of. That's the word I wanted to say. So, I guess what I can talk about actually, since I mentioned how earlier, one of the things in the Zabuza and Haku arc that was brought to the forefront of the Naruto world was how messed up the world is. I don't know if this is true. I've been reading a handful of Kishimoto's writing in between the pages and whatnot, between chapters and such. But something that's hit my mind was the fact that Naruto is expressly designed to be the antithesis to a ninja, in the fact that he is almost always the most standout and loudest thing in the room. Don't quote me on this. I might change my mind as I continue to read more, but just reading from where I'm at now, Naruto will always have how Naruto he reads in his own manga, excuse me, is that he'll do something that's so smart or so cool and then immediately fumble it afterwards in the loudest way possible. That's anti-ninja. What do I mean by this? When he first ambushes Haku, instead of being all silent like and making Haku wonder where exactly the attack came from, he announces himself in a very over-the-top way. In the Orochimaru fight in the Forest of Death, when Sasuke is in trouble and Orochimaru is approaching him, he appears in a similar hero-like manner, slightly less over the top, but he is whatchamacallit, he's still the loudest thing in the room. He's not trying to be stealthy at all. If anything, one of the earlier things that Naruto says to Inari is that he's trying to prove to the kid, at least, that heroes still exist. And if anything, I think Naruto, let me choose my words carefully here. Naruto takes a bit of inspiration from heroes, not specifically Western or Eastern, but just heroes in general. You know, they got to come in with a flashy entrance and all that. In fact, we started this game out with the introductory to Naruto versus Pain, which is as flashy as it gets in terms of an introduction in Naruto. I guess dynamic entry also kind of, it kind of fits in there somewhere, but you know what I mean. And I think that's very interesting because I guess without really saying, Naruto is supposed to be some kind of big change to the ninja world, in just how he's dressed in general. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't really know. But I do think that it's a very interesting point because, because in this show about ninjas, everyone, okay, I can't really say that, especially not in Shippuden, where, the power scaling gets very much so stronger, but, I guess I won't say that, because even though I say that Naruto is not necessarily, he is kind of anti-ninja, but he's still kind of sneaky in a lot of regards, especially in part 1. Part 2 Naruto is still pretty sneaky, all things considered. So, excuse me. So, as we come to, the temptation to talk about this like a Let's Play. Old habits, I guess. Anyways. This is hands down. Even though we're not technically out what I would consider to be the best boss in this game, this is really the strength of CC2. And it's... Oh, okay, that was a strange sound. It's been their strength since the PS2 days of the original Ultimate Ninja series. Their, what's the word I'm looking for? Their big cinematic moments. Thank you. So, if anything, the 6th or 7th console generation, I don't remember which one it is, but if anything, the 6th or 7th console generation was really CC2's time to shine, because due to QuickTime events, they could actually get away with doing stuff like this. Even though they were doing it on the PS2, this is more so appropriate and expected for the video games that were made at the time. With that being said, sometimes their cutscenes or their QTEs are a little too over the top. In the case right here. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing necessarily. I'm just saying that, you know, in this case, it really makes you think that Sakura is a way stronger than she is. So, on the topic of CC2, one of their, like I mentioned, their cutscene, no, QTE rather, their QTE animations and things of that nature are one of their claim to fame, to be completely honest. But they are a for the fan, by the fan type of company. And like I mentioned earlier, it was prevalent since the original Storm games on the PS2. And while that is cool and all, in some regards, it can actually play to a disadvantage if you start here and then want to go into the anime or manga. Most people would want to go into the anime. But the reason I say this is because in certain cases, like for instance the bell string drill test, this is a real nothing of a fight. If you're going into the anime expecting something as cool as this, I can confidently tell you it literally does not get cooler than this. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, they don't... This is framed as a video game, first and foremost, and a video game has to have its own satisfying moments in order for it to be really worth your time in a lot of instances. And because of that, you have stuff like here, where Naruto almost nine tails out, and while that is cool to look at, it also doesn't highlight that aspect of Naruto's character that I mentioned earlier, that, you know, the intentionality of what he says is going to matter now in Shippuden. By the way, I'm saying that without fully remembering what exactly happens in every Shippuden arc, because as I say that, Naruto doesn't exactly talk no jutsu all his enemies. He certainly does not give two blinks about Kakuzu as he hits him with Rasen Shuriken. You can tell how many times I've had to say that word out loud. But at the same time, that is a fascinating aspect of an adaptation, right? The fact that, you know, I can say X, Y, and Z about this game and still say, no, this is still cool. However, is fascinating. And in a lot of instances, this game does its emotional moments way better than really the anime or the manga. But in some cases, it would be better to experience the manga or the anime or the manga. If only because it does much more character lifting. There are certain things, like I mentioned this earlier, but there are certain things that are omitted from the fights, which are supposed to build the character, which is supposed to give you more insight on what they're thinking, that are overlooked in order to make the fight cooler and to have it a better pace. CC2 would eventually get better at this come Storm 4. Unfortunately, that game is Storm 4. That's not to say that Storm 4 was a bad game. It's just not Storm 2 or Storm 3. So... So I haven't actually gone in to listen to this yet. In fact, I had to turn the volume way down so I don't necessarily talk into my own ear, for lack of a better term, because I have no current method of seeing my computer the way it is now. I have to, excuse me, I have to look at my desktop the way it is, but I forgot my point. It's in here somewhere. Something, something, something. I'll remember it eventually. Any case, I guess. Okay, so I'm gonna be completely honest here, in the fact that I haven't. I mentioned it earlier, but I haven't really read through all of Naruto, the original, or Shippuden. If anything, I just read the necessary bit I had to do the live stream of Shippuden, and so in my heart of hearts, oh yeah, okay. Okay, well, we're not going to immediately head towards the Kazekage arc, so I can actually still keep this going. But what I was going to say is that whenever the Kazekage arc starts kicking off, I'll actually just stop it so I can read and have more to say about Gaara. Oh, right. Okay, so looking at the Leaf Village gates actually reminded me of a topic that I wanted to talk about. So, in appreciating the manga and how it's drawn and how each panel is pretty lovingly created, I wanted to talk about, there's a interesting bit. I don't know what this is, but when you look at any kind of media, if it's in motion, you can actually get a bit of tunnel vision in that thing you're looking at. I'm not sure what it is. There might be a terminology for said word, but I know it as I've experienced it myself. So what I'm talking about here is the Leaf Village gates. So this is a very prominent thing of Naruto. If you've ever seen or played any Naruto material where they're fighting at the Leaf Village gates or leaving the Leaf Village in general, you will by nature see the gates. One of the things that ended up making me appreciate the manga a lot, I really wish I was farther along in reading up till now, but I remember as a kid, when reading about Itachi and Sasuke and their past, something that always hit me was, hold on a minute, where's the Leaf Village gates? It's, again, such a prominent thing in Naruto media that now that it's gone, it's like, shouldn't I be seeing this by now? And you don't. You never see the Leaf Village gates in their flashbacks. And it's such a small thing. What could that possibly mean in the grander scale of Naruto's storytelling? You don't see one landmark. It meant a lot. And that's part of the reason why I'm reading my way through Naruto. Another reason is because it takes a lot longer than watching Naruto. But those panels that are created very specifically, that are meant to show you a specific picture, can tell 1,000 words in said picture. Sometimes in the anime, okay, well, I'm not gonna drag the Naruto anime. It's pretty good, all things considered. Kind of unfortunate because it's the last of its kind, due to how it was produced. Nevertheless, it is, there are just some aspects on screen where you focus on one side of the screen and you miss something on the other entirely. This goes doubly so for things like subtitles and things like that, where you kind of have to develop a skill in order to look at subtitles and look at what's happening on screen at the exact same time, and you are more likely to miss something. Oh. I might be also jumping the gun in talking about this, but there's also, I feel, in my heart of hearts, that there are some things that are specifically made around the fact that Naruto is a manga more so than it is a TV show. Once again, to jump further ahead, is that scene where Sasuke is fighting Danzo in the manga. That scene kind of speaks for itself by being a 2-page spread of Sasuke's face and nothing else. And the next panel, like the next page you flip to, is Danzo getting stabbed, right? So that is something that, if you ever wanted to show not tell, an example of that in the Naruto manga, I feel that that is the scene. And for reference, it's in volume 51, I want to say. I'm pretty sure. It's the one where Sasuke has a Susanoo behind him. Like the first volume where Sasuke has a Susanoo behind him. Actually, I think that's the only volume where Sasuke has a Susanoo behind him. Don't quote me on that either. I don't own all of them. But that is something that I feel, and have felt for a long period of time, was something that worked better in the manga because it completely speaks for itself. In the anime, they have to elongate the scene and add sound effects to it to show that this is different from everything else. But, you know, that's because that Kishimoto, when he was writing it or drawing it, did not think, how would this appear in an anime? So, I don't know. It just came off as a bit awkward when I saw the anime try to adapt that for the first time. It's not necessarily bad, it's just different. And in some cases, Naruto's differences can, the differences between the manga and the anime can lead to some exceptionally good scenes. Like the first time Naruto, when Naruto fights Haku and the Nine Tails is oozing out, and the way that the anime animates Naruto's roars makes it feel like otherworldly. I guess that's the best way to say it. Like, it's so different. I don't know how to describe it, and I think that's something that absolutely is enhanced by the animation. So there's a bit of give and take going on there. But pretty sure I mentioned that earlier. Okay, well, considering the fact, oh no, I will act, you know what? I will play Sakura later in the game. Okay, so I can actually play as Naruto. But you know what? I have so few chances to actually play with Sakura, so I guess for the sake of variety. Actually, now that I mentioned Sakura, something came to mind again, and it was the fact that Sakura in the anime is not Sakura in the manga. And I don't mean to phrase this in such a way where they are necessarily, like, Sakura is necessarily a better character or something than she is in the anime, but she's less annoying, I guess, for lack of a better term. I wish I could say that in a much better way, but it's true. And I feel that that is, again, a thing about it. What the heck? What? How am I seeing new interactions after all these years? Anyways. So, like I mentioned earlier, one of the anime's things is that it adds on. I wouldn't say necessarily enhances, but it adds on a lot of things. Some of the things that it adds on is maybe a sentence or two. And those sentences or two can have detrimental effects on a character and the audience's look at a character than what was initially intended. It's actually kind of interesting when you think about it. It's sort of like... No. My example was bad. Never mind. What I was going to say was that it's sort of like the same character being written between two different people, and you can tell when one person's writing it and another person's writing it, but I wouldn't necessarily say that that's the case, because the Naruto anime still follows the manga to an extent. It's just that a word or two more is added on to certain characters, which can make them seem a lot more resentful than they actually are. Um, I was thinking about this the other day, but it's the equivalent of going, "Oh, you need help," to you need help." You know, just changing the word changes how you perceive the sentence entirely. So that's kind of what I was getting at. Anyways, considering the fact that we're not going to really have anything too big to talk about, I guess to say one of the biggest and most interesting things I found in reading the Naruto manga again was the fact that the manga is really deeply interested in how love works, and how the lack of it, the presence of it, um, the no, I guess it's just the lack or the presence, and those two extremes and how they affect people. It's a very interesting thing, and through Naruto himself, I think that it's a very interesting concept that is explore the power of words, because in a show that is very much so interested on showing you cool fights, it also does not shy away from showing you that people are people. You know, you think one person can't be similar to you, but turns out if you try to actually reach out, they share a handful more in common with one person to another than they would initially let on. This is shown many times through the many foils Naruto has throughout the manga's run, whether it be Gaara, Pain, Sasuke. Honestly, the list goes on. I could name them all, but I'm not sure if I remember them all. Let me try that again. I could try to name them all, but I'm not sure if I remember them all. So I'll just leave it at the ones that immediately hit my brain for the time being. Um, with that being said, how do I put this into words? In a sense, I'm very happy that Naruto is a series that got as popular as it did, because for as exhilarating as shonen manga can get, I'm appreciative that one with such a upbeat One Piece ain't exactly down in the dumps and dark storytelling and stuff like that, but it's one that it's a message that can be easily applicable, I guess, for lack of a better term. Yes, anime have very good messages. Never give up. Train and you will. Yeah, the word is coming to mind. Give me a second. You know, you can train hard and see achievements and stuff like that, but something to bridge the gap between people. You know, there's a lot of people who think in the world that they are unreachable for one reason or another, that nobody can understand them, that they're the only ones who go through what they go through, and in some cases you can even see that in very what's the word I'm looking for here? I don't know, just places that aren't necessarily bad or where a person is suffering, such as a YouTube comment section where, that one person goes, "Am I the only one that noticed blank?" And, I don't mean to sound, I don't know, I don't mean to sound like any kind of way, but it's just that, more people go through and or notice and or see and or feel and or this and or that than just you. We're not alone in this world, is what I'm trying to say. We all live in this world together, but it's up to each and every one of us to realize and understand that there are others in this world. I mentioned this as an example to a friend of mine a long time ago. that New York, people lived in a very boxed life. And what I mean by that is New York has a very dense population. But if you've never actually, in any media, in anything, even in my own life, I've never seen many people on the streets of New York stop and try and talk with one another. Despite so many people being in such a densely packed area, it is very boxed in. And you wouldn't think that way of how the Big Apple is, but I don't know. I don't know where exactly my point was in this, but you know, we don't have to live like that, is what I'm trying to say. And that's something that this series highlights. And it's something that I am very appreciative that it highlights. Also, I've been playing this game for like 10 years. I've never noticed that picture of Sakura on the wall with the moon next to it, nor that other picture of Sakura and the Konohamaru Ninja Squad there. In fact, I'm looking at the rest of the pictures back there, and I'm seeing like Choji in the background. Is that Ninetales Naruto? I wouldn't be able to point. Okay, actually, yeah, I can. 1, 2, 3. So from the bottom left, go 1, 2, 3, then go up 1. That could be Ninetales Naruto, or not. I don't know. So, anyways, I know I said I was going to actually read earlier, but yeah, I thankfully I can skip this because this is online stuff. But I guess like one of the more interesting things to talk about with Naruto is its strange technology. You know, with these AC units here, this vending machine here, and that telephone pole there. It's that was definitely something that always threw me off as a kid, or rather a teenager, because I didn't really think of it as a kid. Okay. So, as we come to the end of these side quests. Oh, wait. I gotta run back? Go to do it there? Well, I guess I do have to run back. Okay, that's fine. With that being said, after this, I'm going to end the session. Thankfully, we don't have too much going on at the moment, and thankfully, there was just not much to distract me from that. I guess if that's one thing to mention about this game that isn't so hot, is that there's really not a lot going on even with its side quests. It's the real meat of this game is in the main story. And you know, when you're not doing that, it's, you know, pretty whatever. It is what it is. It's not a big deal. Uh it's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. It's just that I can say that CC2 were much more focused in where they decide to point their staff at. Mhm. I'm definitely not used to that delay in my ears. Okay. All right. Well, as we head towards the save point, I am going to do a bit of moving around actually because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not exactly looking at my computer monitor. So, one moment. All right. Okay. So, that was a stream and a half. With that being said, um, thank you all for coming by. And now, for people who would like to get saved, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to get saved. So, if I was prepared, I would already have this open up by now. Oh, good. I opened up to the right page. So, as it says in Romans 10:9, that if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God hath raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. For with the heart man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. In layman's terms, all that means is that you all have to confess Lord Jesus, Jesus is Lord, and believe that God hath risen him on the third day, and you shall be saved. But why does one need salvation? What could salvation possibly give a person? Well, aside from eternal life, salvation gives a person the chance to be cleansed from all their sins. You know, there's a lot of stuff in this world that we do, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Lies. Some people, some people have murdered, yes. Some people have done even worse than that that I don't necessarily want to talk about. But with that being said, know that you have forgiveness of your sins. That if no one else in the world can forgive you, that God can forgive you through, washing your sins clean from the blood of Jesus. Obviously, this should go without saying, but I'll say it anyways, that once you're cleansed of your sins, don't go back to them. That's something that I feel that should be very obvious, but for some people it's not necessarily obvious. Sometimes we fight things that are addicting, I guess, for lack of a better term. And so I'm throwing that one in there just to make sure that it's fully leveled out, With that being said, yeah. This world can be rough, but it doesn't have to be something that you go through alone. If anything, that is the message, I guess, for lack of a better term, of today's recording session, stream session, whatever, is the fact that we don't always have to go through this life alone. We can go through it with a friend, that friend being Jesus. And man will disappoint you. And I can tell you that's a very true statement. But one thing in my life that I know is that God has never disappointed me a day in my life. Maybe things didn't work out the way that I had imagined it to, but when I look back at everything that I've been through, I can't really say that there was one moment where God had performed less than I expected him to. If anything, he did over abundantly above all I can think or believe. Anyways, I think with that, I'm fresh out of things to talk about. So, yeah, no, I'm pretty good now. So, with that being said, appreciate